So a schmuck picks a fight with me. Doesn't call me. He's got this sidekick, sort of I don't even know who this guy Smith is. Now, he's free to do what he wants. I believe in free speech. Go ahead, buy a subscription. Do whatever you want. It's perfectly fine by me. But don't screw with me, you little bastard.
Ooh, intimidating. That was conservative talk show host Mark Levin, who did not take kindly to the fact that Tucker Carlson and libertarian comedian Dave Smith called him out after Levin had tweeted that neocon is a pejorative for Jew. Now, Levin is a neoconservative. It has nothing to do with being Jewish. It has everything to do with being pro-war, especially in the Middle East. And Republicans, voters specifically, don't really favor the neocons these days. They don't like the neocons. In fact, most Americans don't like neocons. So Levin would really like to be, rebranded. He'd like to kind of run away from the neocon moniker, but make no mistake about it, he is a neocon. So he didn't like that he was being criticized by Carlson and Smith, and so he decided to respond to them. You're about to hear it, but just a quick note. You're gonna hear him refer to Tucker Carlson as Chatsworth Osborne Jr., which apparently was a nickname that Rush Limbaugh had given Tucker Carlson. Are you familiar with this, Cenk?
I am not. That sounds fun, but I've never heard it before.
Yeah, me either. I don't know why that's the nickname. I don't really care, but I wanted to let you know that so you know who he's referring to in this clip. Watch.
You see, all the neocons are gone. So why do they keep using the word neoconservative? Notice they don't use hawk, interventionist, neocon. Why do they keep saying neocon? Because many of the neoconservatives were old-time left-wing Democrat Jews. Chatsworth knows it. I know it. And many of the people that use that phrase either don't know what they're talking about, but in the magazines and on the internet, they know it. So they're not going to say the Jews are dragging us into a war. They'll say Israel is, Netanyahu is. They're not going to say the Jews this and the Jew. So they use neocon. Chatsworth is smart enough to know what he's doing.
Oh my God, there's a lot to respond to there. Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, George W. Bush was a neocon, but wasn't a left-winger and also wasn't Jewish. Am I correct?
You are actually, and I've got more where that came from. But he says, now they're not gonna say Jew or Jewish, they're gonna say Netanyahu or Israel. You know why? Because it's not Jews that are driving us into wars. It's Israel, that's a foreign government, and don't smear Jews in America by pretending that all Jews are doing it. No, most of the Jewish Americans in this country vote Democrat, first of all, and the neocons were all Republicans in the beginning. And so, I mean, Mark Levin has always had, what people don't know about him and Ben Shapiro is that they're actually their original Douglas Murrays. Like they're always claiming some sort of expertise that they don't actually have. So he's like, oh, I am an intellectual. Are you? Because I've never seen it. You always get your facts wrong all the time. You have this hilarious propaganda that never makes any sense. Here, I'll connect every single story Mark Levin has ever talked about. We should do everything Israel wants. Okay.
That's exactly what that is his foreign policy preference. That's it. That's all it is.
Period.
Yeah.
Period. So he'll find a way to make Greenland about Israel. And by the way, the good news is if we buy Greenland, we could put it on his forehead. There'll still be enough room.
Definitely.
Okay, so anyways, so he's like, yeah, it's the neocons are originally Democratic Jews. Are they really? Is Bernie Sanders a neocon? Bernie Sanders is the exact opposite of a neocon. So you're just making crap up and then pretend that you're an intellectual. And so it's unbearable. And so like, I think Tucker's good on this issue.
He is good on this issue. And by the way, look, I don't want to be scammed by someone on the right who like makes a few anti-war statements because he wants, favorable commentary about his statements, but in reality is pro-war. Like, I've seen a little bit of those tricks being played on the right. No, I've listened to enough of Tucker Carlson's podcast to A, understand that he's obsessed with religion, which is scary, but also B, more importantly, he has shed his neoconservatism. He has expressed a lot of remorse on multiple episodes about his past support for neoconservative policies. And for whatever reason, he's evolved on the issue and deserves credit on that.
Yeah, and so again, it's a simple concept. You could disagree with him on everything else, but he's right on this. So I really hated that part where he said they want to say Jew, but they don't say Jew. But one, because it's actually a wonderful thing that they're not saying the Jews are making us do it, because that would be both anti-Semitic and wrong, factually incorrect. Right, so they're actually being correct when they say it's the neocons that wanted to attack Iraq and Iran. That is correct, and it's a specific group that is not just Jewish. John Bolton is in the group; he's Christian. Dick Cheney's in the group; he's Christian.
Mike Huckabee,
George Bush, Mike Huckabee. So and they have different interests. Huckabee cares about Christian Zionism. And Jesus coming back and killing us all. So Netanyahu was a neocon. And Netanyahu cared about making America fight Iraq on behalf of Israel. So that is true, but that doesn't mean, not only does that not represent all Jews in America, let alone the world, but it doesn't even represent all of Israel. Israel at the time didn't necessarily want us to attack Iraq, but Netanyahu did. Why? Because he's a neocon.
He is.
It explains an ideology that has nothing to do with religion. And that's why Mark Levin doesn't like it, because it's true. And he doesn't like anything that's true. And he wants to pretend, go back to the one trick pony. So if you criticize neocons on ideological grounds, he's just gonna call you an anti-Semite. You didn't say Jewish because you didn't mean Jewish, but he'll pretend that you said Jewish so that he can call you an anti-Semite.
Yeah.
It's the oldest trick in the book. Mark, it's super boring and old like you.
And people just don't like people like you anymore. Okay,
They don't.
They've
Nobody likes Mark
wizened
Levin.
up to people like you.
Yeah.
And realize that the things you advocate for are damaging, both to people living in the Middle East, but also to Americans who are forced to go into the Middle East to fight these wars. He's not gonna go in and fight that war. That bloviating hog is not gonna go risk his life or his children's life in fighting a war in Iran on behalf of Israel. But that doesn't stop him from advocating for said war, which you're about to hear in this next clip.
The American people do not want the Islamo-Nazi regime in Iran to get a nuclear weapon. They don't want them to have missile technology where they can put a nuclear warhead on an intercontinental ballistic missile and hit the United States. And the fact that they don't want that doesn't make them a warmonger, a neocon, or anything else. It makes them patriotic Americans. That's number one. Number two, I am hoping, you are hoping that Donald Trump figures out some kind of deal that nobody else has figured out yet, but he's capable of it, to stop them, short of war. But many of us are skeptical. Why? Because we have a brain, because we know the Islamo-Nazi regime in Tehran is a terrorist regime that has violated every piece of paper it's ever signed. That's why we're at the 11th hour. That's why Donald Trump's having to deal with it. We know what terrorism means as much as we know what neocon means. So if you're trying to stop the Iranian regime, which chants day in and day out, death to America, death to America, death to America, and tries to assassinate our president, you're not a warmonger, you're a peacemaker.
Has any evidence been shared that Iran had ordered the assassination of Donald Trump? Because I still haven't seen it.
None, zero.
There were some Biden administration officials who claimed that that was the case. They provided no evidence. And they themselves, by the way, were neoconservatives or believed in neoconservative foreign policy, even though they were serving in a Democratic administration.
He just told on himself. He said something really interesting there. He says, we know what neocon means. We know what terrorism means. So you think that neocon means Jewish, which it doesn't. And then you say, we know what terrorism means. I think he's saying that's what we call Muslims. We just call them terrorists.
Yeah, of course.
He just told on himself,
no,
right?
But Jay, look, this is a really important point. There is terrorism right now, and it's happening to Palestinians in the Gaza Strip by the IDF. So you want to talk about terrorism? Let's talk about terrorism. He wanted to talk about how many children were killed by Hamas on October 7th. Those atrocities were disgusting. Make no mistake about it. But Mark Levin does not care about the tens of thousands of Palestinian children in Gaza that were slaughtered by Israel. Those kids' lives don't matter. He doesn't care about the 2-year-olds that were shot by Israeli snipers in the Gaza Strip. Yeah. And we know about that according to American doctors who risked their own lives to provide medical care to Palestinian civilians in Gaza. I mean, this guy is, the jig is up. Everyone has caught on to what the reality is. And he's holding on for dear life, hoping that he can like rebrand and try to change the fact that he's fallen out of favor with Republican voters. But he has. No one's interested in you.
Yeah, last 2 things for me. He's like, I don't know who that Smith guy is. What happened to you're such an intellectual? Why don't you look him up? Super lazy at a minimum. Okay, second of all, Dave Smith is fairly large. He's one of the leading libertarians in the country and probably way more popular than you right now.
He's a big, strong man.
So when you try to diminish him, what you're accidentally doing is diminishing yourself because you're announcing your own ignorance. Okay, so secondly, he says, now you have a brain. See, he's constantly calling himself smart. So Ben Shapiro does the same thing. We're smart, everyone who opposes Israel is dumb. Really? We're the experts, why? Based on what? Because we love Israel, so we're experts. You're not experts on anything other than being really stupid and a propagandist. So he goes, now if you have a brain, you know about the Islamo-Nazis. That's a word you made up, you moron. That's not a thing that even exists.
I know.
So if you have a brain, you know who's not smart? Someone who's constantly calling himself smart. Okay, and the jury's in on Mark Levin. Neocon, loser, and guy who has no credibility on this issue at all. The most biased man in America and constantly declaring his own ignorance. If you have a brain, you don't know what a neocon is. And you don't know who Dave Smith is. And you don't know anything. You see how I have a brain? No, Mark, I don't see it at all. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.